Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start our EDUCA DPS podcast for today, and we are going to be discussing the world of opportunities and resources offered by the Denver Public Schools libraries. We want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors of this show, VS America, the suppliers of agile furniture for our schools. Together, we are creating future-ready learning environments where comfort, choice, and engagement drive every student's success. I also want to thank Compassion Road for offering this sweatshirt that says, "Be kind, show compassion." Thank you so much for our schools that are providing us with this gear. Ready for takeoff? In 3, 2, 1. Hi, friends and family. Welcome to the EDUCA DPS podcast. My name is Javier Ibarra, and today we have Pete Fay, Library Services Coordinator for Denver Public Schools, here to discuss and share with us the benefit to our students who gain from using the Denver Public Schools libraries as a learning resource. Pete, welcome to the EDUCA DPS podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So for our audience members, can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far at DPS?
Yeah, certainly. My wife grew up in Lakewood. We were living in Omaha, and we moved here in March of 23, and I started working here shortly afterwards. So it's been really awesome. I was working in the Omaha public schools beforehand, so I've been in public schools for a while now. And I think one of the best things about this job is, since I go to a lot of different schools and support a lot of different libraries, I would never tell like a Denver native who I know have very certain feelings about this that I know their city really well. But I do feel like I've been able to just learn the city pretty quickly. I get to know all the different neighborhoods, and it's just so fun to see all the different great school communities that we have here in Denver.
It's interesting you say that because most people see the world through books, but books helped you see Denver because you were, in a weird way, because you were traveling through the city.
That is a very astute point. I mean, I think that my job has allowed me to try so many different restaurants that I would have like never, just hole in the wall restaurants that's just like, oh, I'm by a Mess Elementary right now.
Right.
Where can I eat?
Right.
Just one example of how they've helped me.
You got to post that on social and see what people say. And obviously I wanted to call out for the folks who are watching the podcast, you obviously didn't get the memo on what to wear. So for everyone watching and listening, he wore a suit, very nice tie, and I wore a sweatshirt from a school that was given to me.
My Snuggie was in the wash, so I couldn't wear it.
So Pete, before we get going in this podcast, I want to give our audience members a little bit about our topic. So for our audience, Denver Public Schools libraries offer a vibrant, inclusive space where students can explore diverse books, digital tools, and hands-on learning. Librarians help our students develop critical thinking skills, digital literacy, and a love of reading. DPS libraries help strengthen our academic growth, celebrate student identity, and support families in building strong lifelong learning habits for all. And I can attest to this because all of the great successes that I've had in life is from a love of books. So Pete, my first question to you is, what does a library services coordinator do, and how does your work directly impact students and families here at DPS?
Yeah, certainly, and I appreciate the kind words that you said about our department. I appreciate that. So the main roles that I fulfill in DPS is I train folks who work in libraries, whether or not that be parent volunteers or teacher librarians or paraprofessionals, and I support them in whatever way I can. So sometimes that's like, oh my gosh, we have so many books that need to be shelved, and we have parents coming to the library tonight. Like, can you come here and help me shelve those books? Sometimes if I can be there, I'm there. To we need to reorganize this entire library. I'll come in and I'll help with that. So there's more like on the ground help that I offer to schools and to their library support staff. Additionally, me and my two colleagues, Jen and Chelsea, we buy the books for DPS libraries. So we buy the physical books that go into the schools themselves, and then we also maintain Sora, which is our DPS ebook, audiobook, and magazine platform. So a lot of research goes into that, and I imagine we're going to talk about that later, about book selection process. Additionally, we do media literacy lessons for students across the district. We run the DPS poetry book, which I'm going to talk about as well.
Very cool.
And we also do, this year we're starting a graphic novel program that my colleague Jen is doing. So we're really have our reach extends to a lot of different schools, and we do a lot of different things. And I guess one great thing about working in library services is there's always something new that we can do. So, we're not just like fixed towards these kind of duties. Libraries are always expanding and changing, and we're always, we're okay with that.
Because we have new books every single day. So we have to curate them. We have to eventually read them, look at it. So it's about getting better at getting better, right? This is a saying that we have here at DPS, and you're living it, right? I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
What is something that you do that a lot of people don't realize that you do, or that you're responsible for, right? What's like the behind the scenes of your job?
So I think that one thing that we're really lucky to have in Denver is 3 library coordinators who can spend a lot of time researching books. And so I spend, I have to buy books and things that maybe I'm not super familiar with. And so maybe a librarian is going to reach out to me and they say that my students this year are really interested, and a lot of them want to become mechanics. They want to become auto mechanics, or even especially they're interested in working on electronic cars or like Teslas. Yeah, exactly. That's not something I'm an expert in, but those students deserve the best materials that we can give them. And so I'm going to spend a lot of time researching that topic and figuring out what are experts in the field reading.
Sure.
Are there books in Spanish or French or Swahili or another language that our students speak that is going to be about this topic that we can also provide those students with? And so, you talk about improvement. One great thing about this job is I get to learn about so many different things. I did a lot of research. I think this was about a year ago, but I did a lot of research on skincare and beauty.
Interesting.
Beauty, specifically for Black students and African American students. And so that's clearly not a topic that's really that I had to research before.
Sure.
But and I would never say that I'm an expert on that topic. I'm obviously not. But I feel very confident about the books that I was able to purchase for them, for those students.
Right.
And of course, there's always things that I could learn and maybe do better.
So you're in a constant circle of life where you're researching, learning, and then providing service to our students, which I'm sure people can really resonate to, because that sounds amazing, right? Here at DPS, we are looking at books that help our Black students figure out skincare routines, right? It sounds so cool to me. It sounds cool when you said it, right? I was so impressed.
Yeah, and it's really special that students have access to those materials in their school buildings, and also on their school-provided tablets, on their iPhones or phones through Sora. We are providing access for students to things that matter to them and that really speak to their lives.
Which helps foster the love of reading, right? Because if you understand that, it's safe to say that you're pretty passionate about the work that you do. I mean, I can feel the energy here in the studio today. But I do have another question for you. And you touched on this a little bit, but why are school libraries still essential today, in your opinion, right? Because that's an opinion question, especially when students have so much access to digital content.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that, and I know you're not saying this, but I think oftentimes there is this misconception that digital and physical materials are kind of at odds with each other.
Right.
And I think they're certainly not. Some readers prefer ebooks, some readers prefer audiobooks, some readers prefer the physical book. I'm definitely in that latter category, although in the last 5 years I probably have listened to way more audiobooks and become way more of a fan of that. But I think that a physical library, I think what we really need to focus on is that this is a space where community happens. That this is a safe, welcoming space where students in their school have access to materials that interest them, that no one is telling them that they have to read. And that libraries are a space where, we create school libraries and we kind of just let the magic happen. We don't even really know what's going to happen. Maybe a D&D club is going to start. Maybe people are going to start going there for lunch, and there's one other person there who goes there for lunch, and then soon enough they realize that they have something that's in common and they become friends.
Right.
Maybe that's a place where people can go and play chess together. And honestly, maybe that's a place where students can just go and just feel comfortable for 20 minutes, even if that's just sitting in a comfy chair and just being with their thoughts.
Right.
Like, we're really, really trying to protect that sense of being welcome, of being inclusive, and of being a place where students feel comfortable.
Right, because when you're familiar with the space, you're more likely to go back to it. So when you need help, or when you're actually looking for the book or inspiration, in whether it's a digital, audio, or a physical copy, you already have that awareness, right? They talk about proximity. If you're close to something, even if it's just a space, right? You're in a space full of books. I equate it to people going to a restaurant who want to have a view of the ocean, right?
Yeah.
You're not in the ocean, right? But you are very close in proximity, and therefore likely to come back or actually go to the ocean.
Yeah, and I think also, hopefully this can transcend beyond school, where we can, students leave DPS and they want to create other community spaces where people can go and feel safe and welcome, or become a part of your public library or your rec center or your public park, or other places that are just kind of, open to everyone, where we just can be ourselves.
You mentioned earlier that you buy books for the district and you research and you look through these. My next question for you is, how do you approach building a collection that reflects the cultural, the linguistic, and maybe even the lived experiences of our students here in Denver?
Yeah, certainly. So a big part of that, so a big, in library school, we learn about community needs analyses. So when you're going into a public library or going into a school library or a position like me, it's important to research that community.
Sure.
So we know that we have many different schools in Denver, and each one of them have their own special unique community. They have their own. Maybe you learn that, actually no one at that school likes the Denver Broncos. They're all Oakland or Las Vegas Raiders fans for some reason.
Well, we need to shut all of that right now. Shut that down. Every single person here in Denver is a Denver Bronco fan.
So I think, it's a lot of research. It's a lot of talking to people who work in that building. It's also a lot of talking to students. So we have in our Sora catalog, we have a book that students actually can check out that takes them to a Google form where they can submit a request for a book that we purchase. So oftentimes I try to tell students, if I'm meeting with them in the morning and I'm telling them about this Sora title request form, I'm like, let's just say you're on your way to school, you're listening to this audiobook series, and you finish it on the way to school, and you're like, oh, I really want to start the new audiobook on the way home, but Sora doesn't have it yet. Submit a Sora title request in the morning. It's very likely that by the time you're on your ride home, we're going to have that book already, ready for you to check out. So we're one unique thing that we do is we directly are speaking to students and purchasing things that they ask us to do, or ask us to purchase. So as long as that meets our collection development criteria, then our students can have that. And so it's, I will say that my colleague and I, this will probably be funny to people. I think it was in April or March, a request came in and a student asked for a Labubu book. Okay. And my colleague Jen and I are like, what in the world are they talking about? Yeah, right. What is a Labubu? And, we learned that actually Labubus originated in a Swedish book. Right. And I don't know if that's what the student...
It's like folklore, right? There's some sort of story to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we cannot buy that book in the United States. I've tried. And I think that they only have... I think maybe we can buy the Swedish version, but I don't think they have translated that book. But my point being that we learn things from students from these sort of title request forms. And then now, obviously, Jen and I and most people who are probably listening to this know what a Labubu is.
Yeah. Well, and then tying this back to our overall mission here at DPS, right? I would say that our goals are aligned across departments, which is to help and serve students, right? One of our shared values is students first. And when I think about you are purchasing books and looking at resources that our students want, you actually have a very interesting position, in my opinion, because the data is in real time, right? And our students are going to read that book or listen to that audiobook because they requested it, right? And because of that, you're continuing to foster the relationship with books, right? And so when it comes down to reading in order to learn something in the classroom, their skill set is already there. The foundation is already there because they took the time to perhaps read a Labubu book or in Swedish or whatnot, right? But I think it's important for our families to know this work directly relates to what we're doing as an overall academic goal and journey for our students.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think oftentimes we see that like students, and maybe you're going to talk about this directly later, but like students who are struggling or reluctant to read, oftentimes it's because they haven't had the opportunity to read a book that really interests them.
Right.
And so that's, that might be a Lilo and Stitch graphic novel, which is incredibly popular this year,
Right.
to the amazement of me who saw that movie in theaters like 25 years ago. Although I know they're talking about the live action movie now.
Yes.
So we really try to give students books that they want, and what you're talking about, the hopes that also, like, because we know it will increase literacy achievement.
When you're speaking on my next question, which is how do we foster that relationship for students who might be reluctant to read, right? Because I'll give you an example, right? When I was playing soccer in high school, our coach, if we made a mistake or for whatever reason, the punishment was you run a mile. To this day, I don't really like or enjoy running. And I've switched my thinking around that, right? Because it's good for your health and low impact on your knees, right? But if all you're doing is reading to learn, right? I can only assume that when you have the opportunity, you will stop reading, right? But if you're reading to interest, things that are interest to you, I can only assume that you will continue to, right? So how do you foster that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like, oftentimes reluctant readers are folks who just haven't had the right book put in their hands. And so we are spending so much time figuring out what students want. So that is manga, that's graphic novels,
Right.
that's books in the language that they may hear at home or that they speak at home.
Yes.
That is maybe a very big, beautiful book that has just lots of pictures in it, but it's just really, really cool to look at.
Right.
There's a book that we're buying for high schools right now that I think is called The Big Book of Sneakers, and it's a really cool, beautiful book, and it's really high definition pictures of like basketball sneakers.
Sure.
And like that's a really cool book for a lot of people.
I would read it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times reluctant and struggling readers also don't know what is available.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And so we really hope that, when we're building these physical library collections, that they go into these spaces and they see things where maybe they're not even thinking of it as like, I want them to think of it as a book, but they're just like, wow, that looks so cool. I want to pick that up.
Right.
And maybe exactly like it's not thinking of like you probably are going to learn from that. If you read The Big Book of Basketball Sneakers, you're probably going to learn a lot about basketball and culture and fashion, et cetera.
History.
Exactly.
Yes.
But if you're just enjoying it, then that's what you're going to focus on is the enjoyment.
Right.
And I think that we really, I think I saw this the other day, reading is one of our oldest and cheapest forms of entertainment. And that's something that's always going to be, if you learn to read, that's something that's always going to be there with you.
You will always be entertained.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think it's, that really speaks to not only the importance of what it can bring to your child, to you now as a student, but also to what it can do for you when you're 80, when you're 90.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like an equity thing, right? We have public libraries, we have obviously our libraries, and so in terms of access, it's there. I want to shift gears a little bit, right? So for our family members and parents, caregivers who are listening in right now, we've talked a lot about the benefit to our students, right? But something that our parents and families really want to know is, how are students being taught to evaluate online resources and to stay safe, right? The key word there, to stay safe while navigating our digital spaces.
Yeah. So I would say two things. That what we're doing in library services for that is that we are providing spaces for students to navigate the digital world. So that might be like Sora, where everything that's in Sora is something that has been vetted by our team of librarians, that we feel has value in our collection, and that most importantly meets our collection development criteria.
Sure.
That also could be things like our databases that are accessible to students both at home and at school. So databases, we have the Encyclopedia Britannica suite that students can access at home. If you go to lion.dpsk12.org, you can see which databases are available and then also access Sora that way. But our databases are going to be places where students can, it's going to be very similar to the old school encyclopedia that you would have had in your 80s or 90s library.
Sure.
So if your student is like, wow, I have to do an assignment on oak trees, who knows what they're going to find if they just type oak trees into Google.
Right.
But if they're going to one of the Encyclopedia Britannica databases, they're going to be looking at something that is safe, that's going to be accurate, and is going to help them.
Right, because you never know with slang terms these days developing every single day. A simple term as oak trees might be nefarious down the line, and now we have to watch out for that as well, right? It's ever evolving.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's safe when you search for that in academic, right?
Yeah.
And not in misinformation, in the world of misinformation, because we've taken the time to provide these resources for our students.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're providing those spaces where students can, learn digital skills, but in a more like closeted environment. But then also we're providing students with the critical thinking and the critical thinking skills that they need to navigate this digital world. So one thing that I do is I do media literacy lessons across the district for students. So one thing that I really try to do in those lessons is I download a TikTok video and I bring that into the classroom.
Oh, I'm sure you have their captured audience at that point.
Yeah, so I think, if we're talking about like news literacy, for example, if we're not talking about news literacy through the lens of TikTok, then we're really going to be missing a lot of our students because that is where they're getting their news.
Absolutely.
So one really fun thing that I did last year, I believe that this was at Bruce Randolph School. No, this was at Hamilton. Excuse me. At Hamilton, and it was one of the last weeks of school. I talked to a class of 8th graders, and what we did is we looked at a video, actually several videos that 9th graders across the country had made on TikTok that were things I wish I had known before I entered high school. And we talked about how do we know, or how can we tell that these students are giving us trustworthy information? And so the point really isn't to say whether or not the information is trustworthy.
Right.
The point is to get students to think about why they think it's trustworthy.
Right.
So is it, this student, they just look trustworthy. Like that's not really cutting it.
Right.
But if their student is, establishing their ethos, they're saying, I just finished my 9th grade year, I got a 4.0 GPA, I joined 6 clubs, and maybe then we're going to start listening to that person more because they're establishing why there's someone.
Credibility.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, of course, they could be lying, and that's another thing we need to talk about, but those are good conversations to have.
Right.
Because I think we're missing the point when we're talking to students about what is right and what is wrong.
Sure.
Or like what is, if we have there's no scale that's just like, this is misinformation and this is true. I would generally tell students that things that the New York Times is saying are true, but then we also know that the New York Times misled many, many people about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So I also make sure to tell them about that.
Right. Because it's human-based and people make mistakes.
Exactly. So the point is to establish those critical thinking skills to know, like, why do I think that this is true?
Sure.
Why am I looking at this for my information?
And it's huge. What you're providing our students is really beneficial because it's getting them to think critically, and that's really what school is all about, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to prepare them for a wonderful time in their future, whether they decide to go to college or a trade or start a business or military. Being able to think critically, I think, is underrated. Soft skill, if you will. But I have a question for you that I know families listening so far, they're like, this is great. How do they get more involved? Okay. How do they get more aligned? And specifically, I'm talking with the parents of like the younger students, but also perhaps the parents of older students, high school students. How do they, across the board, how do our parents and families get more involved with the work that you're doing to provide these resources for our students?
Yeah. So I would say that students or that parents should reach out to their school.
Sure.
And to ask about library programming, to ask about the library work that's being done in their school. I would also encourage students or parents to go to lion.dpsk12.org and to look at our Sora catalog, to look at the databases that are available to students, to look at, there's a link to the title request form on there where, if a parent, it's for students to request books, not for parents, but if collectively as a family, there's books that you would like to read in your home, that's a perfect place for you to submit that title request. I also would encourage parents to have their students submit to Denver Poets, which is our DPS poetry book.
Okay.
This is our second year that we're doing it.
Okay.
And you can contact library services for more information about that. Lastly, though, what I would say is that I would encourage parents to talk to foster in their students the values that libraries have.
Absolutely.
So in libraries, we're valuing sharing materials. You don't necessarily need to own everything.
Right.
We can share things in a community.
Sure.
We don't all have to have the newest James Patterson book. But I think one of the great things about libraries is that we learn to co-own things. I would also...
which is a valuable skill for life.
Yes, exactly. And in schools and in work.
Right.
And in families, certainly.
Yes.
And I would... So the value of sharing and also just the value of community. I think that goes hand in hand with sharing.
Yeah.
But libraries, as I talked about earlier, school libraries are a place where school community flourishes. Public libraries are a place where, our public Denver community flourishes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, libraries are places where anyone is welcome. And that, I think, is a lesson that is never going to grow old.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the things why I'm attracted to this work and why I'm attracted to public schools and why I'm attracted to libraries is that these are for everyone.
Absolutely.
And we're not really turning anyone away.
What a message, right? Denver Public Schools libraries, we don't turn people away. That is your new tagline. We just created it here on the show. We'll make sure we'll tag that everywhere.
Yeah.
Pete, before we let you go, I have a few last questions that I want to ask you, and one of them being, going back to the selection process, you talked about the book for students looking for cosmetology and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does DPS libraries choose new books and that selection process? What does that look like? The trends that you're seeing, maybe mention some of them. What are we seeing right
certainly.
now? Yeah.
One really cool thing that I just got to do is that I got to go to FIL Guadalajara,
Wow.
Which is the largest Spanish language book fair in the world.
Okay.
And I was able to, because we know that we have lots of students who speak Spanish.
Yes.
We have lots of students who want materials in Spanish.
Absolutely.
And additionally, we know that a lot of, we know that there are many different dialects in Spanish. So Argentinian Spanish is very different than Puerto Rican Spanish and is very different than Spanish that's being spoken in Europe.
Yep.
And also we know that's pretty difficult sometimes to meet those needs. So we were really grateful to be able to go to Guadalajara this year.
Mm-hmm.
We purchased about $50,000 worth of books.
Wow.
These are books about Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. These are books, these are picture books from Chile. These are, one great thing is I was able to meet with this publisher, Ediciones Ecaré, which is a Venezuelan publisher that is in exile in Spain.
Okay.
And I was able to purchase, they're kind of like the preeminent Venezuelan children's book publisher.
Sure.
So a lot of the most classic Venezuelan picture books are by them.
Okay.
And we were able to purchase so Venezuelan picture books that have Venezuelan like specific words that our students who either are from Venezuela or have family in Venezuela, like their families are going to connect with those words and are going to connect with. So I think one particular book that we're excited to bring here is Escalle de Libre, which is a book about children in Caracas who become political activists in their community. And that's a classic Venezuelan children's book that families in Venezuela know about. So it's really cool it's really important work that we do to make sure that we're getting not just like very culturally responsive titles that students want and that students are going to recognize. Additionally, we want to also We know that students, just like all of us, are influenced by pop culture.
Yeah.
So, in Guadalajara, I found a Bluey book that we could not get in the United States.
Yeah.
But we opened a library at Escalante Biggs Preschool this year. I was there for the first checkout session. It was a Spanish-speaking class. 8 of the 10 children picked out Bluey books in Spanish.
Yes.
So it's like, I knew
popular.
I know that they want the Bluey books. We can't get this one in the United States. So I bought 20 of that. But you asked about what books are popular. Bluey books are really popular in Spanish and English. I would love for them to make them in Vietnamese and Swahili. Manga is incredibly popular.
What is manga?
So manga is... There probably are people who are listening to this podcast who probably are going to be able to give a better, more like academic explanation than me.
Sure.
Manga is Japanese comics.
Okay, so like anime?
Yes.
In a sense?
Yeah, very similar. And manhwa, which is becoming more popular, is very similar but from Korea.
I've seen all those books in our libraries right now. Like, I literally have seen them. We film a lot, and so outside of this gig that we do podcasting, we tell the stories of DPS, right? So myself and my team, we're always out and about, we're going to places, but one of our favorite places to film are libraries because they're so pretty. But I see the books. I see these Japanese, they're thick books.
Yeah.
They're usually white cover with a lot of anime, and I'm like very interested in them and why they're there. Because when I was growing up, it was a lot of like To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Obviously the Harry Potter. I don't know if we had Harry Potter books in our school libraries because I don't know if that was acceptable then, right? But those were the types of books when I was growing up that we had in our school library. So we've definitely come a very long way.
So I think I don't have the stats yet for, obviously the school year isn't done yet. For 2024-25 school year, if we're counting Diary of a Wimpy Kid as a graphic novel, which some people may not agree with, but I am for the purposes of this,
Absolutely.
99 out of the top 100 books that were checked out, I think on Sora in the 24-25 school year, were graphic novels. So 99%.
So kids and students really are not only reading, but they're reading long books.
Yeah, they're reading long graphic novels, manga series that are like 112 issues long.
Sure.
It was really, those books are extremely, because obviously the books we're getting here are translated into English. They're originally written in Japanese or in Korean. We were able to buy some Spanish translations in Guadalajara of very popular manga titles, which I'm very excited about because those are extremely, some people were like telling me just how hard it was to find those. And I, so I'm very excited to bring those up here. And graphic novels are incredibly popular. The Lilo and Stitch graphic novel, as I said earlier, has been incredibly popular this year.
Yeah.
The Creepy Crayon series.
Not familiar, but now I have to read it.
Yeah, it's a Creepy Crayon, Creepy Carrots, and Creepy Pair of Underwear.
Interesting. Okay. This is what our students are reading. Creepy Carrots.
They're very great picture books.
Okay.
And then I think at the high school level, like manga and graphic novels are really popular, but we also see high schoolers reading a lot of adult titles. So Colleen Hoover books were particularly popular this year amongst high schoolers.
Yeah.
And Rupi Kaur, who's a poet, is really, really popular amongst our high schoolers. So it's so cool to be able to see, like what students still are interested in. Twilight.
Twilight's coming back.
Twilight's
never left.
It may actually. By the time I say this, the culture moves so fast that it may be out of style again.
Right.
But it is definitely being read.
Now that 2 adults mentioned it, I'm sure all the kids are going to be nope, done with that.
Twilight and Labubu's are officially over now.
Yeah, because now the adults are into it. Well, Pete, I feel like we can keep talking about this because the passion runs deep for this. I have one last question, which is there anything else that you want to mention that I just didn't get to ask you that you're like, before I leave, I have to tell the audience about this? Is there anything like that?
One thing that we really love buying on Sora are cookbooks.
Okay.
We make cookbooks available for any student, even if the cookbooks are written for adults. We want to make those available for elementary students so that they can, have those family moments or moments with adults. I guess I am going to challenge people listening to this podcast to check out a cookbook on Sora and to make something with their student or students.
And then invite us over for dinner.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
You're realizing my long-range plan here. So make something. We have so many cool cookbooks. You can even get Cooks Illustrated which is an extremely expensive magazine.
Right.
You can access that on Sora. So
check out Sora.
Check out Sora. Check out our cookbooks. Make some lovely food. That's my last message.
Pete, I want to thank you so much for this valuable message. This has been an amazing episode, I would say. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, friends and families, this concludes our EDUCA DPS podcast for today. I want to give a big thank you to our guest, Pete Fay, for such an important conversation. And I want to thank our DPS communications department and, of course, our superintendent, Dr. Alex Marrero, for their constant support of all of our multimedia productions, including the EDUCA DPS podcast. Please, if you found value in this, share the content. This is how we get more eyeballs, and this is how we continue to see what topics you want to hear on EDUCA. So share with your friends, your family, your dog walker, share with everybody. And you can find us on all major podcast platforms under the DPS Podcast Network. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Denver Public Schools Plus. And don't forget to tell your children more often, I believe in you and I know you can do it. My name is Javier Ibarra. Until next time.